What's up, horror hounds and smokers? This is your producer, Josh. Today, we're talking about the 2020 film Rent-A-Pal, starring Wil Wheaton. It's about a lonely guy named David and how his loneliness and search for love ends up making him friends with a sinister man in a VHS tape. Sounds pretty crazy, right? Well, stay tuned because we have a special guest with us tonight, the writer and director, Jon Stevenson. He's going to spill his guts in an exclusive interview. All that and more today on High on Horror.
Now it's time for Puff Puff Ask, the segment of our show where you listeners write us in questions through email at highonhorror420@gmail.com or on any and all social media platforms minus Snapchat at highonhorror420.
Yo, man, Puff Puff Pass.
Nobody signed up for our premium snaps.
Alex from Trenton, New Jersey has a pretty good one. He says, hey, Drew and John, I love the show, man. Thank you. I love how informative and fun your show is. I kind of wish you guys covered older movies more often, like Roger Corman stuff. What's your favorite Roger Corman movie, and are there any chances you do a review of a Roger Corman movie? All right, great question, Alex. So here's the thing. John and I have a thing here where we try to keep our reviews on older movies as a special. As you noticed, they're kind of the special title was John's idea, but to keep them a little separate because, look, to be truthful, unless you're Joe Bob Briggs or Elvira, nobody wants to hear about a movie that's 40, 50 years old. It's been done, and every YouTuber out there has got it up. You know, they've got a review, or it's just, you know, it's old cake, it's old hat. So it's you know, we're more interested in trying to keep up to the now and interviewing more, not to say relevant in a disrespectful way, but relevant people who are doing things now, like indie filmmakers, like today's guest, and other people like that. So we like to kind of stay more modern to keep up with what's going on now, because we feel that everything's been covered before. Like we pretty much, all right, well, I'll kind of throw this out there. We're debating on doing a Elm Street series review type of thing, but that's just going to be for fun. You know, we know that there's a lot of people out there that don't really care to hear people talk about A Nightmare on Elm Street for the billionth time, but that's still something that we would do. So yeah, doing a Roger Corman movie is something that, you know, I could see us doing down the line if it's something that is suitable. We're not against it.
But has somebody ever covered the saga of the Viking women and their voyage to the waters of the Great Sea Serpent?
That's what I was going to bring up. That fucking movie, directed by Roger Corman.
One of the longest titles.
And what an amazing title too. Like, you just know, like, just off the title, it's like, yep, I'm going to crack a beer and I'm watching it. That's all I need. Somebody just comes in, hey man, I don't know what you wanted to watch tonight, but I have the saga of the Viking women and their voyage of the waters to the Great Sea Serpent. Do you want to watch it? I'm literally going to go, yeah.
Attack of the Crab Monsters.
Well,
the original Fast and the Furious.
Well, the thing about Roger Corman, though, is, you know, he's directed 56 movies and he's produced
over 500.
Right. So it's he's the, you know, the question's kind of vague, but because when people say, you know, a Roger Corman movie, they don't really necessarily mean directing. They just mean, like, I guess, a movie with his name on it. So, you know, like, he did Piranha. Piranha's good, but that's directed by Joe Dante.
Piranha 3D, though.
Right, yeah, Joe Dante, again, he keeps coming up. Joe Dante, I'm going to have to bring him, see if I can get him on the show. You know, we've talked about Gremlins and The Howling 1,000 times, and here he comes again. He directed Piranha.
Slumber Party Massacre he was a producer of. Yeah,
and also I guess my favorite movie of his was originally known as Monster, but now it's known as Humanoids from the Deep, and he was the executive producer on that. Barbara Peters and Jimmy T. Murakami directed that, but again, Corman was a producer. That's probably my favorite movie with his name attached to it. However, if I were going off movies he directed, I would have to say it's the Edgar Allan Poe, Vincent Price, the Mask of Red Death from 1964. Pin the Pendulum's good too. All those old gothic, you know, Edgar Allan Poe, Vincent Price movies, but Mask of Red Death does it for me.
Well, I guess he was uncredited in Death Sport, but man, let me see. Of the movies he's directed, It Conquered the World's a good one.
Yeah. He has, like I said, there's over 50, almost 60 titles just under his...
Mask of the Red Death probably, but that's not the one. The crab one's the one I've seen the most. I don't know why. He did the original Little Shop of Horrors. Attack of the Crab Monsters.
That's your answer? Or you're just
That's the one I've probably seen the most. The
Okay.
Mask of the Red Death is probably definitely the best one.
It's funny too when you see the Little Shop of Horrors though, like his original version, because when you see it, it's very satirical, but it's a very like funny movie and it's dark. And then you see like the Rick Moranis musical remake, and it definitely like, it's more of a satire, more goofy and laid back, and it doesn't have Jack Nicholson's crazy ass in it.
Jack Nicholson makes every movie better, like Tom Atkins.
Agreed.
All right, getting on to our second question here. Max from Washington State. Is there any movie that you won't watch due to it making you less high or stressing you out? I can tell you what stresses me out is Rob Zombie's Halloween.
I didn't see that one coming. That was good. That was good.
Yeah, I was hoping you wouldn't figure that one out. Actually, well, I was
You get the sweats. You got the meat sweats.
you
Just
got the
thinking
meat
about it.
sweats watching Rob Zombie's Halloween. I don't know why specifically meat sweats.
I don't know either. Don't ask me. You're the one that has them.
You ain't ever had meat sweats, not once.
Not ever Rob Zombie's Halloween.
I can't really think of one. I mean, I guess maybe it's more like what wouldn't I watch by myself?
Yeah.
I'd probably say like Sinister.
Okay.
For the longest time, I couldn't watch the It miniseries by myself.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I have one that I think you might agree with. So I would have to say I was thinking about this question.
Solo?
Solo. 100%. Because the thing
The
is,
shit
again,
with that raspberry sausage?
again, the thing is, yes, because look, there are brutal films out there. Like I would consider the August Underground films to be more hardcore. A Serbian film, I don't know. Honestly, I don't even know if I'd say a Serbian film is more hardcore or not. But there is again a sense of cinema, a sense of enjoyment in those movies. Some of you are like, "Ugh, Serbian film, no." You know, it's like whatever, fine. You don't like it, cool. But it is, if you get it, you get it, and it is like it's a decent movie. Yeah, it's like those movies you can kind of see like it's a movie, but with Solo, it's almost just like pure dread. Like I don't really get anything out of watching it. You know, Pasolini really hammered the nail on that one, man. Like no matter how baked I am, I could stand being scared. Like you said, Sinister. I could stand, smoking and getting scared. That's kind of fun for me. The Exorcist used to bug me out, but not anymore. But I don't think there's ever a part of me that's going to be able to just get baked and enjoy just kid rape and watching people eat shit. I just don't ever see that being like, let me crack a bowl and relax to that. That's just not happening.
Let me crack
a
bowl.
bowl. Like I'm
Crack a
beer.
bowl,
I'm at
dog.
beer. crack a beer.
You just cracking bowls. What, you fill it? It's like a disposable. You just smoke it and then you just crack it afterwards.
Fuck it.
Fuck it. Well, I guess with that, I don't have anything else.
You agree? Is that gonna, or are you still saying Sinister?
I don't know. I feel like I could still smoke.
To Salo, you say you can still smoke and chill?
Yeah, I'm not like saying like I'm celebrating. I'm saying I could still like smoke. I'm not like, oh shit, they eating the shit. Let me pack a bowl right quick. I'm like, I'll smoke if I'm smoking, but like,
I don't know. Maybe it's not. It's to me, I feel that like this is a bold statement and a broad statement, but I do feel that it is somewhat true. To me, Solo is like an hour. I don't even remember how long the movie is actually. It's been like so many years since I've watched it because I just don't watch it often. I think it's about 2 hours. Let me check real quick. Let me see what it says. It's about, I don't know. I'm gonna say it's about 2 hours long. But my point is that it's just it's the worst parts of Cannibal Holocaust drug out over 2 hours.
yeah, that's actually a good point.
That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, I don't know why. Like, yeah, I feel like it definitely feels long too.
That's the thing. Even if it's hour and 57 minutes, I was right. But like you just said, even if it wasn't an hour and 57 minutes, it certainly fucking feels like an hour. And also, it says not rated. No fucking wonder.
Yeah, I think you showed that to me like 3 years ago or something like that.
That was and that was one of those ones when you watched it, you didn't really say anything afterwards, and I was a little worried. I was like, did I just lose a friend?
Oh.
Come to find out, you're just like making your fiance relive the shit at home, telling her about it, watching her gag and laugh. So you got something out of it. Well, what's that say about you that you'll watch something fucked up just so you can turn it around and flip it on other people to get their reactions?
That's true. Anyway, I think that'll about wrap this up. So, yeah, make sure to send your questions in to us on everything Drew said except Snapchat. You got to pay extra for that. So, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. That's
TikTok.
all. I guess you could send them through TikTok somehow.
If you want.
If you want, you just gotta click on the video. It's like send us a message. Anyway, High on Horror 420. That's where you can send the questions in. You can email them to us at highonhorror420@gmail.com, and you can always submit them via our website, highonhorror.com. And now it's time to get into our film discussion of Rent-A-Pal.
Rent-A-Pal?
Rent-A-Pal is a 2020 film written and directed by today's guest, Jon Stevenson. Rent-A-Pal is the story of David Brower, played by Brandon Landis Falcons.
Brilliantly played by.
I hope I pronounced that last
Falcons,
name.
yeah. That's how
Falcons?
I would say it, yeah.
The Millennium Falcon. Anyway, he's a middle-aged bachelor who's looking for romance through the video dating scene in 1990. His father passed away 10 years ago. He was an accomplished jazz musician, and now he takes care of his mother, Lucille, played by Kathleen Brady, who's suffering through dementia, and in addition to that, she's irritable and often mistakes David for her late husband, Frank. And like I said, David's using the video dating scene, and it's Video Rendezvous is the name of it. Like, you just... Sounds like a name of a place that's just setting people up to have sex, right? It was like Video Rendezvous was like the old school Tinder.
Yeah, that's a very good way of looking at it,
and,
actually.
He's been trying his dating service for 6 months. No luck. Diane, played by Adrienne Egolf, she is such a predator. This woman charges in nickel and dimes David out of everything.
Oh, yeah.
It gets worse throughout the film. But like I said, she's always charging David for every little thing. So she suggests, because it's been 6 months, he should update his video profile. So David comes in, he records this really heartfelt, video about how, he cares for his mother, and he just wants to be somebody there to take care of people. And the guy filming it was like, oh, you went too long. It was 1.5 minutes. And you got redo it in 30 seconds. And those 30 seconds went pretty brutal for him. It was god-awful. As Don Vito in The Godfather said, look at him butchered my boy. On the way out, he combs over the bargain bin of the VHS tapes. He finds one called Rent-A-Pal. David takes the tape home. He watches it. On the tape, there's a man named Andy, played by Will Wheaton.
Will Wheaton.
And he appears to talk to the viewer in the tape, and he allows space for the watcher to respond. And David's watching the movie, as he's watching I guess it's not really a movie, it's the Rent-A-Pal tape. We learn a lot more about him through this tape. And without getting into more here, this tape isn't a one-time viewing for Andy. He might watch it more than you and I have watched Child's Play 2 together.
Well, yeah, I mean, he literally almost... he pulls the tape out at first, and it's kind of like, nah, this is dumb. And then literally you watch him just break down and get so desperate that he just literally gives in.
And some weird shit happens when David watches this tape.
Right. Well, also, I wanted to bring up, though, real quick, one of the most pathetic scenes in the film for me, for David, was when he calls the video rendezvous, and Diane answers, right? Yeah. And she answers, and he goes, hi, Diane, it's David. And she goes, account number, please. Like, he calls... almost like expecting her to know who he is. Like, he's expecting, like, oh, I'm there all the time. She knows who I am. And like,
because he even goes, it's David.
And she has no idea. And she just goes, give me your account number. And she looks up his account. And then she's like, oh yeah, here you are. And it's like you said, she's a ruthless predator. Like, he's nothing but dollar signs to her. And here he is thinking that she's actually putting effort in. She cares about these people. She's trying to hook them up. She don't care. She doesn't know their names. And it's like that. The fact that he's so used to going there that he expected her to be on a first name basis with him, to me, was just kind of pathetic. And the fact that she didn't is even more pathetic.
And shortly after where I stopped here, another example is shortly after he gets the Rent-A-Pal tape, David gets a call from Diane that she's found a match. And he runs down and he forgot his wallet. Mm-hmm. So then he goes back, and this is the fucked up shit. he comes back and she's like, oh, somebody else came and got her tape. She matched with somebody else.
And I knew that was going to happen. The second he said that he lost his wallet, she just did not look happy. Like, and you could tell it was a next in line type of deal. Like, you know?
And then he goes, well, can I at least see what I was missing out on? And she goes, sure. Gives him the tape and then charges him for the tape that he's not going to get a date of.
Yep.
Like, Diane's probably the biggest piece of shit in this entire
She was probably like, he's going to go home and pull dick to this anyway. So, you know what? I'm going to charge him.
Wow, she should say, probably. But,
I mean, I'm honestly, let's be real for a second. You know that a lot of people were doing that shit back then.
I'm sure. Dude, and have you ever seen, like, any of... Do you remember them as a kid? I vaguely...
Yeah, they
I'm
look
old
just
enough
like
that
it
I
in this
can
movie. Like,
yeah.
authentic. Like, those
And
like,
those dudes with... It
filmed
was
in front
always
of a
dudes with
shitty backdrop.
stashes.
You know, and it's always the dudes that are always so nervous and pasty looking. You know what I mean? And then,
Either that or dudes that look like they were, like, trying to be Tom Selleck that were, like, overconfident.
yeah, and then a lot of the girls, it's funny because you got a lot of the girls that you'd see were just, you know, like the ones you'll see in this movie, they're kind of mousy, and a lot of them were actually, like, some of them, like with the dudes, you're like the ones that I remember seeing is of dudes. I remember thinking like, well, there's a reason they're looking to, you know, connect with somebody, and then you see some of the women, and you're like, really, like they're striking out so much that they need to reach out. They're pretty, you know. So it's always ugly men and pretty women is usually what I see. Or what I've seen, not what I see. I don't watch them.
I mean, ugly,
I'm
desperate
married,
men
just
is
so y'all
how
know.
they're going to get their money. But, yeah, once again, it's another movie we're reviewing around a VHS tape. And it's amazing when you think about it, really, how little Will Wheaton actually...
Will Wheaton?
How many...
Sorry.
How many lines he actually has versus how much he actually speaks in the entire
impact
movie.
of the movie he has, yeah, the impact he has.
Because like you could tell it wasn't a long recording process, but the amount that's just stretched out from that one recording that's used throughout the movie, it works.
Andy's control on David is like controls the narrative.
And the real Andy probably has no fucking clue. Like he's just going making Run a Pal 2 to search for more money.
Yeah, right. Yep, he don't give a damn.
But yeah, we're trying this new thing where we don't spoil movies as much,
especially newer movies.
Especially newer movies. Videodrome, we're telling you how that's ending. Like, you had your chance.
You had your chance. You've had 40 years.
Business is business. But yeah, definitely check this out on Hulu.
This is like, I wanted to say this real quick. We interviewed Lucky McKee, one of our favorite interviews, one of our favorite episodes from May, a movie that we both fucking love. I was thinking so much of May when I watched this movie, man. I was like, if this isn't like the male version of May without the doll, it's more like replace the doll with a VHS, and it's fucking May. It's that same, like, anybody can relate to that level of loneliness, and anyone can maybe not relate, but maybe could sympathize with the mental break that occurs from it.
I would say maybe it's even more of a slow burn than May.
Yeah, it is. It is more of a slow burn for sure.
But yeah, there's definitely parallels you can see between it. But it's on Hulu. Like I said, check it out. What would you give it, Drew?
You know, I was thinking about this, and it's hard, like, because...
And it's also one of those kind of movies that you can't really... Unless you're going to ruin the movie...
Yeah.
You can't really dive too deep into it.
Yeah, and it's... You know, the thing is, there's things about this movie like that really stand out about it. Like the acting is really well done, and the fact that it's done on a low budget, but it's not overly ambitious. It's just more focused on telling the story. You know, and last week we did Broadcast Signal Intrusion. Man, we're doing some hard movies, so like all good. Like there's no negative thoughts. It's just I hate over.
That's obviously why we're putting them on.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, and
they're good, and we want to talk to the people involved.
Absolutely, and that's the thing that when I'm saying that, like, it's hard, I'm not saying it's hard because I'm debating between giving it a bad review and a good review. I'm saying it's hard because it's like I hate overrating movies. I hate, like, I've done that before when I used to blog where I'd give a movie a high rating. And then years later, I go back and I'm kind of like, I don't know if it really was a 10, you know? So I kind of like try to refrain from that. Like I said on prior episodes, a 10 is more earned. Like The Descent is a 10. When that movie came out, I gave it like an 8 for the longest time. And then after like 10 years, I was like, all right, it's definitely a 9. And then when you watch it and it keeps up its integrity, you're like, all right, it's a 10. It held up, you know? So anyway, I'm rambling. So my answer for this, I think that this movie has the complete potential for me to say that it's a 9. Later down the line, like completely, like give it a couple years when I watch it again. But either way, it's a solid 8, 8.5 right now.
I was going to say like 8.6, 8.7.
Yeah.
See, and the problem is, I don't even remember what I rate the other movies. So
Right.
there might be other movies that I've rated higher that if I've looked back, I probably went, oh, maybe I wouldn't have rated it over that movie. But when I think about it, that's where I put it.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's necessarily a comparison. Like,
Yeah, it's
I mean,
hard to
obviously
compare a
it's
lot of movies.
comparison,
It's
but-
hard to compare a lot of movies. And that's the thing about movies is it's important to not review a movie when you're watching a movie. Unless you're a movie maker and a fucking know-it-all, it's really important to not watch a movie and go, oh, this movie sucked because I would have done this and I would have done that and they should have done this. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just watching the damn movie. I'm just so
Right.
My job as a I said movie maker. My job as a movie watcher and as a critic and as a fan is to just simply watch what is there and judge what is there. Not throw in any of my, oh, they should have done this or I would have done that. Nope, cut that shit out. Watch what's there. And that's what you're talking about. That's what you're reviewing. You're not going to don't put any of your outside nonsense into it. Just watch the movie and review that movie. Review what's there. And with what's there, it's like there's nothing to not really like. I mean, to not dislike. I mean, there's nothing to not dislike. It's like everything about this movie is completely likable.
Yeah, the casting was really well done. You definitely, David definitely.
He carried the movie. He
Yeah.
definitely did a good job carrying the movie.
Yeah, that character, you could definitely feel how lonely he is and the life he's kind of. Because he's not trapped in it. He's keeping himself in it, but.
He's definitely miserable. He's content with being miserable. You know, I guess that's the best way to put it.
Well, I don't really think there's too much more we can say about Rent-A-Pal. So I think now it's time to get into Burn and Learn, the segment of our show where we fill you in on some behind-the-scenes facts about the movie we're talking about. And in this case, Rent-A-Pal.
Oh.
Burn and learn.
Actually, this is a pretty cool burn and learn because director Jon Stevenson sent us over these himself. These are exclusive to this podcast. You're not going to find these on IMDb. I'll go first. Here we go.
You might afterwards.
That's very true. And remember, you heard it first on High on Horror, goddammit. The real High on Horror. David's mom, Lucille, is played by Kathleen Brady. It was her first feature film role, having spent the majority of her career as a top-level theater actress in Denver, Colorado.
Wow, that's actually pretty interesting. That was her first film role.
Yeah.
The station wagon used by David in the film is a 1989 Ford Country Squire. It was purchased off Craigslist by Jon Stevenson for the movie. He still owns the wagon, lovingly named Lucille, and takes his kids out for joy rides in the summer.
Will Wheaton, I have to stop. Will Wheaton filmed all his scenes for Rent-A-Pal in just one day. He was so good that they finished filming 4 hours early and actually had to come up with other things to do to fill the time. Now that's pretty cool.
Wow, 4 hours early.
That's a professional right there.
Amy Rutledge, who plays Lisa, was cast for the film after she submitted one take of her monologue from the Video Rendezvous dating video. The director loved her performance so much she was hired without additional callbacks and flown out from New Jersey to film the role.
Oh, wow. The house location where David lives was located next door to the director Jon Stevenson's home. It was previously occupied by an old woman who had recently passed. All of the furniture and items in the house were already there except for the couch, TV in the basement where David talks to Andy.
And the Video Rendezvous lobby scenes were filmed at Colorado Film School, where Stevenson went to college for cinematography. All the scenes of Video Rendezvous were filmed in one day.
Oh, no kidding. That's true indie filmmaking right there.
For sure.
All right, well, now it's time to talk to the director, Jon Stevenson himself. Let's get deeper into this movie, man, and talk to the guy behind the camera.
Yeah.
See what he has to say.
Today's guest does it all from cinematography to writing, editing, producing, and now directing. Recently, he produced an episode of WWE's Peacock series Evil. I'm a big fan of that entire series, but you did what I think is the best episode, in my opinion, The Brothers of Destruction.
Thank you. I got lucky with that.
And it's not because I'm biased at all with The Undertaker.
Yeah, thanks, man. He's I felt grateful that they assigned me that one because I agree. He's the best one. For sure.
I feel like that was the marquee one everyone was looking forward to. But the main reason you're here today is to talk about the amazing psychological horror film that you wrote, directed, produced, and edited, Rent-A-Pal. Welcome, Jon Stevenson, to High on Horror.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me. I appreciate you reaching out.
It's awesome to have you, man. We're really looking forward to talking to you. So, but I want to start this like we do with everyone. You know, you're on High on Horror, so I understand you are a smoker, right? How often do you blaze?
You know, it's yes, I do smoke. I smoke less than I used to now that I'm older and have kids, but like it's definitely a part of my creative process. So it's a common thing in my life.
Right on. Well, do you have like a favorite strain, or are you an indica or sativa guy?
You know, it depends on the day. Right now, actually, I've been really enjoying these 1906 like pills, and they have different kinds. There's like Go, Genius. I like Genius because it makes me feel like I'm going to be smarter. And then Love, and you know, all these other, so you can take ones for different moods, and so I enjoy taking those. And then you know, I'm not too much of like a connoisseur, so I don't keep track too much of strains or anything like that, but in general I think indica is a little better because I do tend to get a little anxiety on the sativa.
You know, I've been hearing that, I feel like, a lot recently. Everybody felt like it used to always be about sativas, but now I feel like as me and my friends have got older, it's more, I want the indica. I just want to relax.
Exactly. I don't want to be afraid that I'm going to get in trouble.
And do you have a favorite way to consume? Is it edibles? Is it smoking?
Yeah. You know, I get pre-rolled raw cones and just fill those up and smoke myself a little joint. I used to smoke cigarettes, you know, so I still enjoy the smoking part of it, but like I said, those 1906 pills too are just like really easy to pop.
I agree. I love the raw cones. They're just so easy. They already have the little filter in there. You just fill it and twist it, and you're good.
Mm-hmm. I'm not as cool. Like I've seen people roll joints, and there's nothing cooler than just being like casually rolling a joint while you're having a conversation. So I haven't taken the time to learn that yet.
And I wanted to jump in here with the Evil series. How was it working with WWE and Peacock?
Yeah, that was a really interesting process. It's funny that I ended up working on that show because I'm not like a huge wrestling, follower. I obviously like grew up, seeing it, so I was really familiar. But a friend of mine was the showrunner, and so he brought me on as a producer to work on it. And I had to become like a wrestling expert within a month. So I was just reading like every article I could, because aside from the Undertaker episode, I also helped write outlines for all the other episodes. So,
nice.
Having to just know everything about Randy Orton and Stephanie McMahon and, Hulk Hogan. So it was really fun.
Is that like something you would want to do in the future, like more stuff with WWE and Peacock?
If they asked, I would totally be open to it. It was just fun to do something outside of my normal wheelhouse. I do a lot of documentary, stuff kind of outside of the horror filmmaking, and also commercial work. And so I'm always doing a lot of things. So this was one of those new experiences of like wearing the producer writer hat. Normally I'm writing and directing. So if they asked me to do something again, I'd totally be down.
And you said you weren't the biggest pro wrestling fan, but you watched it growing up. Did you have a favorite wrestler growing up?
I think it was Hulk Hogan, but only because like he was the guy. Like you couldn't escape Hulk Hogan, and so I'm sure I had a few Hulk Hogan toys, but I never actually watched the broadcast because I don't think my parents would let me, and so I just never really got into it. But it was It's really fun, especially the Hulk Hogan story, learning about how just like really getting into the business side of it and how he was at WCW and then went over to WWF and they had the invasion and then WWF bought WCW. So there's just all this really good history there to learn too.
And getting into Rent-A-Pal, I had to ask you because you did edit your own movie. We had Jacob Gentry on last week, and he said for him, editing his own movie was kind of weird. Did you feel the same way about that?
You know, I totally understand that sentiment. I think it's different for everyone. I personally started out as a shooter, and a lot of times and I ended up editing my own stuff. And so I'm very much used to editing, what I'm shooting. And in fact, I think editing makes you a better shooter because if you're in there cutting, you know exactly what you need. So then when you show up, you're just like, oh yeah, I'm not going to use that. No, we'll just cut there. So it actually helps a lot on set. And I think it made us really efficient in shooting Rent-A-Pal because I knew no, we don't need that. We're going to cut to the medium for that line. And then, because I had the whole movie kind of in my head beforehand too. So, but yeah, I've always been interested in working with an editor, someone else editing a movie that I write or direct, because I do think it would be interesting to have someone else's eyes on it and, see them. They are removed from it, so they see it in a way that you might not have thought of, which could be really exciting. So I hope to be collaborative in that way someday on a future project.
Yeah, it's funny because I had mentioned, as John had said to our guest last week, Jacob Gentry, and I had mentioned to him how it's funny because he said that although it was weird for him to edit his film, that it was also like the funnest part for him. And I had said that I think that I have never made a movie before. I've never filmed anything. But from my perspective, I imagine editing being more, it's more movie magic than actually filming because so much stuff is done in post-production that it's like all in editing can change anything. It can make anything just go from one thing to another. You can add one scene in between another scene and just totally make something completely different. So it's like, don't you feel that editing kind of is more movie magic than maybe actually directing? Or part of movie magic, I should say.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that because, when you think when you start writing the movie, you're watching it in your head. And so then you write the script, then you pull everything together to direct it, and then we shoot it. And it's like, all right, this is coming together. But then when you sit down and start cutting it, you have the footage, you have the sound, you have music. And my favorite thing to do is to pull the raw footage into the timeline, start adding music cues and little sound effects. And it's like, ooh, it's starting to be a real movie. And then cutting it all together and making those decisions. And all of that is probably my favorite part. And especially sound design. I did all the sound editing and sound design for the movie too. And that's if I wasn't in another multiverse timeline, I would imagine I might have been a sound engineer because I just really enjoy the cutting of the sound effects.
Right on. A lot of people say that nowadays it's hard to make a movie. And with, a lot of people we have on this podcast, we have a lot of indie filmmakers. So I want to ask you, is it hard to make a movie nowadays? You've done it all. You've directed, you've edited, you've produced. It's like, everyone seems like they're making a movie, but everybody says that it's hard to make a movie. What's your perspective?
I think there's a lot of ways you could interpret that. It's hard to make a movie and get it distributed. That's hard. It's hard to make a movie and make money or, those kind of things. In my opinion, it's the easiest it's ever been to make a movie. And it depends on what kind of movie you're making. But people hate the sentiment sometimes, but you really can go out and shoot a movie on an iPhone. If you know what you're doing with lighting and framing and all this kind of stuff, the camera ultimately isn't a big factor. You can shoot with almost any camera. It's just a different look that you're picking when you're picking the camera. And, just with I've got this awesome Apple laptop that they just came out with that can edit red footage. And, and technologically, it's never been easier to make a movie. And also to that point, it's really easy to make a movie if you make it easy. And that's kind of what we tried to do on Rent-A-Pal, that we were making a movie with everything we had at our disposal. I already owned a camera and lenses because of commercial work I had done. All my friends work in the film industry, so I brought them on and they were helping me out. But also, it just so happened that like the house next door to my house was empty because an old woman was living there. She passed away. I became friends with her sons, my neighbors. And I asked them, I was like, hey, could I shoot a horror movie in this house? It's really cool. And they were like, yeah, sure, man. That'd be so cool. So the reason that house looks so authentic and cool is because everything that's in that house was there. Like we pulled some stuff out of boxes and out of the attic and stuff, but like everything was there. And we only brought in the couch downstairs, the TV, and a few other things to make sure that everything was period correct. But like, that's what I mean is like, we just got lucky that we had this treasure trove of high production value. And so from that perspective, it was really easy to pull that off because it just so happened to be next door. So, that's never going to be the case for everybody. Like some like, oh, I just happen to have a perfect location next door to my house. But at least keeping in mind that idea of making a movie with what you have at your disposal and not trying to like go out and find something that is really hard to get. You can make a good movie with the things around you if you just are smart about how you put it all together,
100%, I agree. It's some people just on a shoestring budget try to be too ambitious, and it's like when you work with what you have, it's really. And here's the thing: I've always said this. People don't always agree, but it's the truth. Budgets and big effects do not make movies. Stories make movies. You can have a story about two people sitting in a room and have it be more compelling than buildings blowing up and robots in the street. It's like story is what's important. So I think it's a part of people being too ambitious and saying like, I know that I have a low budget, but I want to do this, instead of just going, I want to tell a good story about characters and I can pull that off.
Absolutely. And not only is it's all about story. Absolutely. And to your point, let's say you had $100,000 and you're trying to make $1 million movie or a $10 million movie, or, like something that's too ambitious. It's like trying to build a mansion out of cardboard and being like, hey, look how beautiful this mansion is. And people are like, it's made out of cardboard, bro. Like they're not going to fall for it. And so you have to, if you have $100,000 to make a movie, make $100,000 movie. Don't try to make something more than what you have,
Yeah. This isn't your first time getting kind of involved in the thriller horror. I wouldn't really say that Rent-A-Pal is horror. It kind of is on the edge. I definitely consider it thriller. It's kind of horror, but you were involved in Eat. How did you get involved in that? That's a pretty solid movie.
Yeah, Eat's awesome. Eat's directed by the very talented Jimmy Weber, and him and I went to film school together. So that was the first feature film that we made together. So I shot that movie, and then Rent-A-Pal was my first kind of crack at directing. So.
Okay, gotcha. Well, so with the anthology films, the VHS films, and there's like 4 of them now. And with, there's Beyond the Gates, and there's Censor, and all these movies popping up about, the VHS era and, about VHS tapes and them being cursed or whatnot. And Rent-A-Pal fits right into that. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the appeal right now with the VHS genre and like thrillers and horror films? Do you think it's, a lot of missed opportunities while the VHS era was happening, like movies that could have been made during that era about that? Or do you feel that it's like kind of just like a nostalgic thing that you can take people back to something that's nostalgic, but put a little like twist on it?
I think it's nostalgia based mostly, because, like when I was a kid, Back to the Future came out and my parents were like growing up in 1955, so like around that time they were making a lot of movies in the 50s and then there's a lot of stuff that took place in the 70s when we were in the 90s. So I just think it's that time where like people that grew up with VHS are now reaching adulthood and kind of like, yeah, I remember VHS. That's crazy, you know. And I'm sure there's going to be a horror movie in the next 5 or so years with a CD as like the villain. Who knows? But I will say, there's something really cool about the VHS aesthetic. Like, what got me really excited about Rent-A-Pal is just how when you're watching something on a VHS tape on an old CRT television, you kind of like The Ring. There was just something so creepy about the tape because it was a tape and not, you know, like a crystal clear thing. And so much of the creepiness of that was just like also mixed with the nostalgia. I thought was really cool. So yeah, I think it's just one of those things that's like coming back around, you know?
Absolutely. Either way is like totally an acceptable answer because, like you said, it's VHS babies are, you know, all over it. Either way, it's just, you know, I wanted to hear your perspective on it. And Rent-A-Pal was your first feature film as a director. It was your first feature film. So, what do you find most fulfilling about making a movie and getting it out into the world?
Man, there's so much about it. I don't know that I could pick the most fulfilling thing, but I will say that it's really hard physically. It takes a lot of energy to make a movie. You know, we were talking about, is it hard to make a movie? No, but yes, it is, because like the amount of time and energy that you have to put into it to pull it off, like it's your baby, it's your passion project. So in order for a filmmaker to put themselves through that, the idea that they're trying to bring to the screen has to really just like move, you know, be something that's a huge inspiration for you, really move you from your core. And that's what Rent-A-Pal was for me. Was I had a lot to say with that movie for myself. And so to come up with the idea and be like, I have to say this, you know, type of thing, and then finish it, and I'm cutting it and I'm seeing it all come together, and it's really cool. And then it comes out and people watch it and they like it. It's just, I think that is the most rewarding part, is like, hey, it was all worth it. And what I felt, that inspiration that I felt to do this project, was something that other people can also feel. So in general, with all the things that I do, directing is definitely the most fun. Like, it's so much fun. And I really enjoy that. I love doing, did my earpiece die? Can you guys still hear me?
No, I can hear you. Yeah.
Sorry. With all of the different things that I do, edit, shoot, whatever, directing is definitely the most fun. And I really am excited to do it again. So, you know, but the good news is I really love writing too. So I'm writing the next thing, and that's awesome. So just every step of the process is so fun. And I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world that I get to do it for a job. Like, how crazy is that?
Yeah, it's awesome. Living the dream, man. Good for you. That's awesome. I'm glad that you find so much enjoyment and fulfillment out of doing it. You know, I've always wanted to direct a movie myself, but I've never done it. I've just studied them. I'm like Tarantino that never got behind a camera, but I don't have like half the knowledge. You know what I mean?
You should do it, man. I highly recommend everybody just, you know, and sometimes directing is as simple as making a short film with your friends. It doesn't have to be this like big undertaking, you know, and I don't know. I used to shoot movies when I was a kid. When I was 13, I got my first camera, and we would go out and like make spoofs and Jackass ripoffs and all kinds of stuff like that. But looking back, there was stuff that I was doing where I was like, oh, I was like directing back then, even though I didn't realize that's what it was. And so I think people think of directing as this like, oh, this artistic endeavor, but really you can just like go and do it, you know? So I highly recommend anyone who thinks that maybe they could make a feature, they definitely should.
Yeah, man, I definitely will consider it. You know, like it's definitely something that I would like to do. It's on my bucket list. But I want to delve into kind of like the psychology of Rent-A-Pal for a second. So your lead character David. I grew up in a broken home, so I wanted to ask you this question. So your main character David, he mentions how he was kind of abused as a kid and how his mom went harder on him than needed. And the way he clings to her. Would you say that David suffers from Stockholm syndrome? And does he really enjoy taking care of his mom, or is it just, he's so lonely that he does it to have someone to be around?
Yeah, great question. I wouldn't call it Stockholm syndrome, but what I would say is David is someone who grew up as a people pleaser, someone who felt, hey, I have to do whatever I can to make the people around me happy. Otherwise, they might not love me. And that's the kind of house that I grew up in, and a lot of people, that have, maybe you experience that yourself. But that's kind of the difference between unconditional love and conditional love from your parents. So what I was trying to say with David was that he's someone that even if he really doesn't want to do something, will do it because he feels like he has to. And so part of him, if he would have had the means and the money, he probably would have put his mom into a home. But because of their circumstances, he kept her at home, but also probably felt a sense of obligation and duty towards her, and is just constantly trying to get through to her, like, hey, I'm over here. And she doesn't even know who he is, So just trying to get that, finally get a little bit of love from her, I think was what I was trying to do there.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. It was more my dad than my mom, but I can totally relate to what you're saying. That makes sense. More of just trying to just do everything you can to kind of kiss ass in a way to kind of just break through and get that like moment of acknowledgement. 100%. I get it.
Yeah. And it's when you grow up in that kind of household, it programs everything about your personality. And not only will you, it basically leads to a lack of boundaries with people. And so you inherently form unhealthy relationships with other people because you have no boundaries, because you're just like, yeah, I'll do anything, whatever it takes to like make you happy, And that's kind of why David falls for Andy, is there's a part of him that like, dude, it's a tape, but even if it's just a tape, he still wants to like be respectful and make the guy in the tape happy. Like, no, yeah, we're doing this, right? Like playing to this thing that's not even, real, a person. It's not even a real person in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. And going more into the psychology of David, or the psyche of David, in the video rental store, David picks the black jelly bean out of the bowl. What were you trying to say about David? Like, what does that signify about him?
Anytime I ever see a black jelly bean, I go, who picks the black jelly beans? Who likes black licorice? Who likes Mounds? Also, by the way, I don't know if you caught that, Mounds.
No, I didn't.
He's drinking a Mound, or drinking whiskey with a Mounds. That was the reason we did those, was specifically to be like, who picks a black jelly bean out of all the options? This fucking guy does,
Yeah, he's the weirdo of the bunch, basically.
Yeah. No offense to people who like black licorice. I don't get it.
No, I'm with you. I also avoid black. I don't get it either. So here's a question. David and his mother watched the 1940 film His Girl Friday, and that's a specific movie. So like, I wanted to ask you, like, what was the significance of that? Does that hold a special place for you personally or something? Or was that just something that you thought fit the movie?
Unfortunately, the answer is way more boring. I paid for the movie too. I used all my own money. And so we were like, we have to find a movie that they watch together that is public domain, so we don't have to, pay for a licensing. So I went and I looked up public domain movies, and I started going through some, and I clicked on His Girl Friday, and it took me to a YouTube clip. And the YouTube clip that I just randomly picked was him saying, "Oh, you're moving with your mother into Albany, eh? Great," And I was like, "Oh shit, this is exactly what I need." And I went through the movie and saw that there's a few times where he talks about his mother, or I was just like, yes, perfect. So I just went with that. So I unfortunately have never even watched the movie all the way through.
Okay, good. I'm glad, because honestly, like, I'm that guy that if you had told me like, yeah, this movie inspired me because of this and this, I would have gone and watched the movie, but I hadn't. So I was like, that's why I asked the question. Because I'm like, is this something I need to watch to understand Rent-A-Pal a little more or something? So that's why I asked the question.
No, man, save the time. I'm sure it's great. Like, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, more of a compliment than a question, but I really like how you used David talking to Andy as a way of finding out more about David's past and giving him like character development by finding out about his dad and such. I felt that that was a very clear and clever way to get us deeper into David's psyche while also expressing his loneliness, because while we're getting to know him, he's talking to a fucking TV.
Yes. And I'm sorry, you broke up. So were you talking about the dating tape that he was recording?
No, I'm saying when he's talking to Andy, and like when he's talking to Andy, he's telling Andy about his past and about his dad and whatnot. And I think that was a very clever way to give character development of him by showing like you're learning about him, but also like seeing that you're learning about him by him talking to a TV. Like how lonely can that be? But that's also a brilliant use to get that like character development in there.
Great, thanks. Yeah, that was like that's why the movie was so exciting. Was you imagine like oh, it's a movie about a guy talking to his TV? What do you mean? But because of the nature of like the Rent-A-Pal thing, you have this character in the TV that is intentionally being manipulative. Like it's scripted, so he's not being authentic. And he sits down and he asks you these questions and he leaves time for response. And so everyone who watches the tape and sits down with Andy will have a different conversation with him, even though his conversation is the same. And so it was kind of like, ooh, how could I build the Rent-A-Pal tape so that it requires David to answer things about himself and we get to know him more. So it was kind of like crafting the what Andy decides to bring up that gives us opportunities to know more about David. So when I was writing the script, it was like, what do we need to know about David? Oh, we should probably know something like this about him. Maybe he was bullied at school. So let's put in a scene where that comes up. And anyway, I'm glad that you thought it was cool.
No, yeah, I thought it was a very clever way to get you to learn the backstory of a character, because he's the type of character where you can tell he's depressed and he's so mopey, and you can tell you're like, damn, I bet he probably had a troubled past, and there's not really room in the movie to like show his origins or show his growing up. So to like use the means of Andy asks him a question and he answers gets you that answer, but also like keeps the movie and the narrative moving along without sidetracking to tell the story.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like too that you learn a lot about David through the setting, what the house looks like, his basement, like there's a lot of character built into that too, of like, okay, like you never see him sleeping on it, but he has a cot in the corner. Like he doesn't even bother to get himself a nicer bed. It's almost like he treats himself like crap.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that you can just discern about him just from seeing the way he set up his space down there.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I send you over to John, I have one more question that I wanted to ask you, and that is that so David ruins his relationship with Lisa after blowing his load. That's by his own doing. He self-destructs the relationship and turns on his mother in a vicious fashion. And I feel like that's a mirror of today's society, because, nowadays people would rather talk online to people that they don't know or people who truly don't know them than go out and live life. Pen pals are taking over real life, and it's not preparing people for the real world and how to handle mishaps. They just shut down and go back to their comfort zone. Do you think I'm looking too much into this, or do you feel that that's very reflective of what is going on?
100%. 100%. The key of what you said there is, we were talking about the people pleasing side of David there. That also means that you grow up not being able to have confrontation. It's very hard for you to like argue with someone because you're like, I don't want to hurt their feelings. I just, and so in that moment when they're kissing and he, blows his load, she's very understanding and cool. She's like, hey, is everything okay? But he's unwilling to like he's too afraid to have a conversation about it. So he immediately gets defensive. he immediately shuts off. You wouldn't understand, so he doesn't mean to sabotage it, but because of who he is, he almost can't help but do it that way because he doesn't know how to do it the other way.
Yeah, and I wanted to go back to Will Wheaton for a minute as Andy. I know Robert Martin Jr. was in charge of casting, but was that somebody you always had in mind for that role? Like, he's overly friendly, but it's still very haunting. Like, it just has that, like, layer underneath of it.
Yeah. Getting Will Wheaton was an absolute dream. We sat down. So the whole thing with Rent-A-Pal when we were planning it was like, okay, if we do the film this way and it's a guy on a tape, that means that we could get a name actor and have them fly to Denver and shoot for one day. We could pay a bunch of money for one day and get a name person and they'll be in the whole movie. It was like our perfect, way to sort of like cheat the system. And so we made a list of our top 5 picks. Like who do we think is within our reach, but would just be perfect? And I swear to God, Will Wheaton was number 1 on the list. And through a fortuitous set of circumstances, we got connected with Robert B. Martin Jr. And he was like, so like, who do you see in this role for Andy? Well, here's our list. If you can, even if you get like number 5, we would be so stoked. Just let us know. And he was like, dude, I can get you Will Wheaton. So he was able to get him, the script. And luckily Will read it and we talked on the phone. He just like loved it. He was like, dude, this is an awesome script. I would be so excited to be a part of this project. And I had the phone on speakerphone and I was just like, Will Wheaton's saying nice things about our movie. Oh my God. So it was like we got lucky, but it was just the perfect thing where for whatever reason, the script really resonated with him. And I think, he's explained this in other interviews, but a lot of what he brought to that character was based on sociopaths that he had dealt with in his upbringing. And so, he just had it was very personal to him as well, which was really cool that he like came to the movie with like, hey, I got something to say with this too. And we were like, great, man, that's amazing. So it was just like, I never thought it would be that it felt like it was meant to happen. It was so cool.
Yeah, you summed it up good. It was like an undertone of sociopath in there. It's like the guy seems very nice on the film, but you're just like, something's not right about this guy. Like, why is he making this like video for people?
Right. Yeah. It's like you're kind of witnessing a playbook, how to do magic tricks, but for a narcissistic sociopath, what their playbook is and how they make you feel good about yourself and then get you to open up and then destroy you, yeah. Anyway, it's that character was really fun to kind of figure out in what ways he was kind of a psycho,
And where did the like genesis of this story come from? Like the idea of setting it with a 90s dating service, and like those videos seem so authentic. Like I remember in the early 90s, like even on like cable access, they would play like some of those dating videos, and like they're that bad that you see in like Rent-A-Pal.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I just had been running across. They were starting to go viral again. Like different YouTube channels were bringing back, hey, look at these crazy old dating tapes. And I had recently seen a few of those before I started writing. And it was just it is so like the nostalgia factor of like how ridiculous it was, but also it was just like the perfect setting to have our main character. Like, how is he going to come across this tape where you rent a pal? And there was an early outline of the script was like, well, maybe he like does Columbia House and he gets 7 tapes at once. And one of them, he's like, sure, I'll try Rent-A-Pal. Or maybe he goes to the video store. But it seemed like a really great opportunity with the video dating to sort of put it in that world. So, yeah.
That's funny you mentioned Columbia House. That was like the biggest scam of the 90s.
Right. And my mom totally signed up for Columbia House, and she was like, we're going to get 7 movies for the price of 1, kids. And we were so stoked. We loved doing it. And then, looking back, it's like, oh man, they made us pay a lot of money for these videos.
I'm sure there's people that were like still in debt to them when they closed, like a lot.
I am.
It was like the first Netflix, though. You could, just like,
true.
Like when Netflix was doing their DVDs, just get a bunch all at once. And I would, back when I was younger and I was a reckless, lawbreaker, I would just rip the movies and then, have this like digital collection.
I mean, that's a smart way to go about it. It's not the most lawful, but early 2000s was the Wild West for piracy.
Yeah, man. When Napster came out, it was like, wait a second, you can just download the shit. Everyone, you can't help yourself.
So I wanted to ask, David is such a nice guy in the beginning. You like feel for him. He just like can't ever catch a break. And then he just has a like terrible 24 hours. Was it his entire life that kind of led to that snapping point, or was it just like those series of events, just like that's what did it?
Yeah, it's definitely his entire life leading to that whole thing. Because the thing with, I don't know if you guys know this, there is a real tape. It's called Rent a Friend, that you can watch. It's the same concept. And so you look at something like that and it's like, who would who would buy this? Who would watch this? This is crazy. And then, and so that was the thing that like got me into thinking about the movie, was like, who would fall for this? What kind of person would it have to be to watch this tape and actually be like, this is my pal. I rented him and now we're pals. And that, so, everything about who he is made him the perfect victim to fall into this trap. And maybe he's the only one, or maybe not. But, it was just a unique set of circumstances that brought him to that point.
I don't think anybody else that would have experienced Rent-A-Pal would go back to the store and like destroy the place to get another copy. See, he should have learned that when he was being assertive, he got what he wanted. The lady was like, I'm not even going to charge you this time.
That's right. That was the whole thing with that character is all of the bad things happen to him in that movie because of choices he makes. Like, he chooses to cancel his date with Lisa to go like watch a videotape that asked him. Yeah. And you're just like, what are you doing, you idiot? And so that's, it's self-destructive, like we talked about. And also just, he doesn't ever choose what he wants. He only chooses what other people wants because that's who he is.
Yeah, like David kind of almost starts incorporating stuff from Andy into his life. Like he steals the joke from the video. And like towards the end, is David still in control, or is he kind of like morphed into like Andy at the end?
Yeah. That's the one thing that's probably the most open for interpretation of like, does Andy possess him at the end, or what's going on there? But I do think that ultimately David is in control the whole time, and he just finally gets to where it's too much. Everything, and that's been happening to him in the course of the film, but also whatever happened that earlier in his life that we never saw is finally breaking loose. And he's, channeling kind of the creepiness that is Andy into what happens in the finale. And but I think you could interpret that a lot of different ways.
And one last question about Rent-A-Pal. Is David the ultimate bros before hoes kind of guy?
I think I think if you asked him, and hindsight's 2020, he probably would have said hoes before bros. But well, that's part of the whole thing with Andy is the toxic masculinity aspect of it. That the like some of that locker room talk, some of that like talking about how girls are sluts that sleep around, just some of that stuff I think was important to say there too. So there was in a way loosely like commentary on that on like literally bros before hoes.
I mean, he chose a dude in a videotape over a lady that was very understanding of his situation and like
Yes.
super helpful.
She's perfect. Like, what are you doing, man? How could you do this to yourself?
That's the worst part about him. It's the whole time, every decision, you're like, why? Like my fiance, like one of the things that made her the most mad in the movie is when she was still going to charge him for the videotape to go watch after she was like, no, she, you didn't come down. She picked up somebody else's tape and they're going out on a date. Then he was like, well, can I still see what I was missing? That was like the most, she's like, why would you charge him for that? And I was,
yeah.
I
and
said,
why
that's
would you
not
pay
even the
for
part.
it? Why would you agree to pay for it?
That was my thing, is like, I would be like, well then no, at the very least, then take it back. I'm not paying for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, again, like David's character, everything he does because of who he is. And, like he falls for Rent-A-Pal because of the perfect circumstances of who he is. And in order to be that person that falls into the trap, he has to be someone that's constantly making these kind of decisions where you're just like, what are you doing, man? Why are you doing this to yourself? And then he goes home and watches the tape and tortures himself with it because she's amazing. It's like any normal person would just be like, I'm going to no, thank you, and forget about it and move on. So it's,
I'd rather go out on the date than play Go Fish with a videotape.
Right? Come on, man. Mounds? What do you
now,
think?
Is it just Mounds, or do you have problems with Almond Joy too?
Here's the thing. I give Mounds a bad rap. They're not bad. And I also like really enjoy those Girl Scout cookies, the coconut, what are they called?
Samoas.
That's like my favorite one. And frankly, the difference between a Mounds or an Almond Joy and a Samoa is just a little bit of cookie crunch. So,
that's true. I like Almond Joys. I'm not a big fan of Mounds.
Right. You got to have the almond, at least something to give you the crunch.
And so I think we solved the Mounds Almond Joy dilemma. Mars should just discontinue Mounds and only do Almond
It's
Joy.
kind of amazing to me that it exists. It makes me wonder if, like, I don't know I just don't ever see anyone pick up a Mounds, choose the Mounds. And so it makes me wonder, like, do they make Mounds out of all the leftover stuff from the other candy bars? And they're like, hey, we got a bunch of coconut and chocolate left. Should we just like, yeah, sure. Like, how is it still around? I don't know.
Well, I personally, while we're on the topic of candy, before John moves on, in case you can't tell, we like us some candy. Do you prefer Hershey's with almonds or without? I'm a guy, I like Hershey's with almonds more
with
than just
almonds.
Hershey chocolate.
Yeah, I love almonds. I'm like, why not?
Yeah, it's a little something extra, and it's the same price usually.
Right. Hershey Kisses with almonds versus the plain Hershey Kiss. It's nice to get that crunch in the middle. I don't know.
So we wanted to ask, do you have any upcoming projects?
Nothing that's, concrete. I'm definitely working on a few things. You got to get a bunch of irons in the fire so that one of them actually goes. And so it's just, doing that. I'm in that stage right now, but I've got a lot of stuff that I'm really excited about. It's too early to talk about because, it's not fully baked. High on horror. But yeah, it'll be, hopefully I'll have something coming soon.
Do you feel like things are starting to open up more? I feel like that's what we've been hearing a lot is, when COVID kind of shut everything down, and now it seems like around now, like there's a lot of people able to go back to working on stuff.
Definitely. I think everyone's kind of, it definitely has felt the most normal it's felt in a long time. And that includes going back to movie theaters. When Rent-A-Pal came out in September of 2020, so we were still like in lockdown, and it had a theatrical release because I don't know if you remember, there's like a bunch of drive-throughs that were surging during that time because that was the only place people could go to see movies safely. So we had a bunch of drive-through openings. And then we were in, like Alamo draft houses and stuff. So I think we had like 60 screens, and we didn't make any money. Like no one saw it because it was, so many places were closed. And, but so it kind of put a damper on the release. We were like, oh man, we didn't even get to have a premiere because everything was closed up. So, I'm really excited for the next film because I've never actually gotten to see Rent-A-Pal in a theater with a crowd. I've never seen it with a group of people. I've only ever heard what people thought of it. So, and that's a big part of making a movie. You want to like show it to people and see how they react to it and get that satisfaction. So I'm looking forward to that on the next one.
And where can people find you online?
Instagram is what I'm on. And my handle's Jon P. Stevenson, Jon, no H, John.
Yeah, I'm the H John. You're the no H John.
That's right. My carbon footprint is slightly smaller than yours.
You got me there. Again, we want to thank you for joining us today. Rent-A-Pal, I mean, I wish I could have got to have seen it in theaters as well. But we both enjoyed it, and we're glad we got to talk to you about it.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you guys. It was fun talking about it.
Thank you. That was great. Thanks to all the horror hounds and smokers out there for tuning in. Thanks to Jon Stevenson for being high on horror. And if you haven't seen Rent-A-Pal, make sure to check that out immediately. And join us next week when Slapface writer and director Jeremiah Kipp joins us. Slapface is currently available exclusively on Shudder. Make sure to follow us online on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok at High on Horror 420. Visit our website at highonhorror.com. While you're there, buy some merch, sign up for our newsletter. If you sign up for our newsletter, you'll get the latest episodes and guest announcements sent directly to your inbox. While you're there, feel free to submit a question for Puff Puff Ask. And you can do that through the website, or you can always email us at highonhorror420@gmail.com. And that'll about wrap her up. Catch you later.